Hello from Grand Junction, Colorado, Los Angeles. Awesome.
Hi, Lily.
Hello, Senator Bennett.
How are you? Sorry about that. We did have a little technical stuff. I'm not the best at that stuff.
No
Where
worries.
where are you where are you today?
I'm in Lakewood, so just outside of Denver.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm actually heading home today. I can't wait to get there. It's the first Thursday I've come home, and I'm going skiing this weekend. So
Oh,
I'm with
amazing.
my oldest daughter, so I'm excited about
What-
that too.
What's your favorite resort?
Well, we're going to go to Vail this weekend, but we'd like to go everywhere.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I'm an
it's
Arapaho
fun.
Basin fan.
Well, it's a great place. They're all great places. But
Speaking of
thanks for
skiing,
having me. Thanks for having me.
yeah, yeah. I'm really excited to have this conversation. And I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit, just jump right in, why
Sure.
public lands are
Yeah.
special.
Well, public lands are, you wouldn't think that you'd even have to make an argument for public land because they're such a part of our culture. They're such a part of our heritage. We're so, at least I feel, unbelievably grateful to the people that set aside public lands in the past that we're able to enjoy today. And that's, who I have in mind when I'm working on public lands is the next generation, the generation after that. It's who we are as Westerners. It's who we are as Coloradans. And today I was really excited to introduce once again the CORE Act, which is about 400,000 acres of public lands across the state of Colorado, that when it's enacted will be the most substantial piece of public lands legislation that we've passed in about a quarter of a century for Colorado.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I spend a ton of time in public lands. We're camping, hiking, climbing, fishing. I'm so grateful for those spaces, and I'm really grateful for people like you that are protecting and preserving those spaces. So if you can kind of introduce the CORE Act a little bit more, how did it get started and where
What
is it at right now?
actually got started was four different bills that we pulled together, and it's about, as I said, 400,000 acres, 70,000 of which is wilderness, which is critically important because that's where our watersheds begin in the West. And we are fighting to make sure we protect our national forests and those watersheds so that every single community, no matter how big or how big or how small, every single farm and ranch is downstream from those communities. 40 million people in the Colorado River Basin as well rely on that water. So this is not just about setting apart land so that we can go hiking. It's about preserving the lifeblood of the American West. But it doesn't hurt that there are really iconic mountains here, like Mount Sneffels outside of Telluride, Mount Emmons outside of Crested Butte, where we have had the longest running mine fight since the 1970s that we have finally ended. That land is going to be preserved forever. And the Thompson Divide in the Roaring Fork Valley, if you ever have the opportunity to fly over, you can see on the western side of the divide, it's drilled all over, by oil and gas guys, and there are roads everywhere on the western side. On the eastern side, there's none of that, and our cattle ranchers for generations have used that land for their cattle operations. People have skied on that land and hunted on that land, including Teddy Roosevelt, by the way, who hunted bears on that land. And this is a way of being able to preserve that for generations as well.
That's amazing. And I think there's a couple of comments here, and I'm wondering, especially given the recent layoffs, loss of staff on public lands, how can we be part of protecting these places? Like, what actions can we take?
Well, I think we need to make sure that our voices are heard when we're going through the process of passing or working on these public lands bills in the committees in Congress and on the floor of the Senate, making sure we lift our voices up. That's important too. We've got to make sure that we support elected officials, both at home and here, that care about our public lands. And I would say oppose people who don't care about our public lands. There are people that have an ideological bent that is, I believe, totally inconsistent with what Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated voters want, in Colorado, for example, who just believe there shouldn't be another inch of public land. Mike Lee, not to name names, but from Utah, who's now the chairman of the committee that this bill has been submitted to, he made it hard for me to be able to protect, and Joe Neguse from Boulder, and actually Cory Gardner from, my old Republican colleague. We were all trying to protect Camp Amachi on the eastern plains of Colorado to make it part of the National Park Service. So we never forget the fact that there were 12,000 Japanese Americans who were interned in that camp in World War II. That's another important part of public lands, is to preserve those kind of memories and that kind of history. And his view was not one more inch. Well, the people of Grenada, Colorado, very conservative part of our state, they said, we'll donate the land to make sure this happens. And that's another example of how we can work together. I mean, that community, the high school students in particular of Grenada, for decades and decades, literally for more than a generation, have worked together to preserve that. And only because of what they have done as citizens is now the National Park Service taking that over. I'm so proud of the work those kids have done.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it really is amazing. And it
Yeah.
testifies really to what we can do as citizens, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And that reminds me of a question around if you can share a story of hope, especially, working collaboratively across the aisle in the current political system. That would be really wonderful for us to hear.
Well, so that, I'm not going to repeat what I just said, but that I take a lot of hope from that. And I have met many families, Japanese American families whose parents were interned and whose grandparents were interned in that camp. Some people who were born in that camp and who, have been able to know that their family's legacy is going to be protected because we're protecting that. Obviously, our ability to protect Camp Hale, which was the first national monument that the Biden administration created all across the entire country. That was us, and that was very bipartisan. Veterans from all over the country, who, by the way, were 10th Mountain Division veterans, but know how important our public lands are for vets that are coming back from Iraq and were coming back from Afghanistan, the healing that they were finding in the mountains of Colorado. That created a very unusual bipartisan coalition. And believe it or not, I have a bill with your friend Lauren Boebert, from the Colorado delegation on the Dolores River, as a way of protecting part of that spectacular landscape for the future as well. So what's been great about working on these bills in Colorado is that there's not a single one of them that's been written in the committee room in Washington, D.C. Every one of them is written on kitchen tables and on next to streams, next to rivers, on mountains in Colorado, people from all walks of life. And in every single case that I can think of, every single one has had bipartisan support at the local level.
I love to hear that. That's really great. And I feel like we need more of those stories being told, because a lot of us are getting really frustrated and sad around public lands right now.
If you look at the CORE Act, more than 70% of the people on the western slope support the CORE Act, as an example.
That's amazing.
So,
I love to hear that.
Yeah.
And this is part of that, but do you have words of optimism for those who want to preserve our public lands, who spend time in public lands?
I think the only way that they've ever, none of them, not a single inch or centimeter or acre or half acre of our public land has ever been preserved by accident. It's only been preserved because dedicated citizens came together and said, we want to protect something that our parents and grandparents loved and that we loved. We want to keep it for the next generation. I think about the Hermosa Creek Watershed Act that I worked on with Scott Tipton, also a Republican from Southwest Colorado. This was a group of people that just came together at the local level and said, how do we make sure that we protect this forever? And they were able to come together and do it. And we are always looking for ideas all across the state of Colorado, and new ones pop up all the time. So I would say if you have a place that you would like to protect, let me know, let our office know. And the antidote to what's so broken about our politics really is these coalitions of citizens that are forming in spite of that broken politics. And public land, I think public lands are a great place for us to rally around, because they literally can't be protected unless citizens say it's something that we want to do, and we're going to force to have happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I encourage folks to learn who represents you and learn about the places you love and speak up for them.
Can you tell me about how you got interested in this stuff? And also, I'm curious about your academic interests too.
Yeah, I mean, it was a natural progression, spending lots of time outside, falling in love with our world, the birds, the trees, the lichen, the moss, and then figuring out how to be in reciprocal relationship. How do I benefit them as much as they benefit me? You know, I feel the most at peace in nature outside, a majority of that being public lands. I find refuge there and inspiration. How do I not only benefit, but give back? I think that's a big emphasis.
Where do you like to go?
Oh, everywhere. I just discovered outside of Golden, so not too far from me, White Ranch open space. And that's very close, 20-minute drive. There's very few people there.
Yeah.
I just, wander the forest, and it's the best.
Yeah. One of the first hikes I ever took in Colorado when we moved there was in Golden Gate State Park, which is right next to
That's where I got engaged to my husband.
Yeah. Oh, really? That's so funny.
He got down on one knee in an aspen grove. It was perfect.
I also know you're involved in transferring what you know to school kids too. And can you talk about that too?
Yeah, I have a master's degree in biomimicry. So understanding how nature works, the strategies that surround us, and applying that to design on every level for a more life-friendly future. It can be, you know, as small or as big as folks want it to be, and it's applicable to every field. And getting kids excited about nature, getting adults excited about nature starts with this curiosity around how nature works. And then for biomimicry, we take it one step further and ask, how can we understand this on a deeper level and apply it to our own world, which I think is really hopeful.
What's the first example of biomimicry that you give your students when you're
The classic example I give is the Shinkansen train in Japan. It's the high-speed train that was originally had a very rounded front, and it would go through tunnels going over 200 kilometers an hour and create this sonic boom because of the shape of the front of the train. And the engineer was a birder, and he noticed that kingfisher birds dove into water. They have this very long, elongated beak, and it allows them to catch fish without creating a ripple really efficiently, going from one medium to the next. So they redesigned the front of the train with a very elongated front, totally eliminated the sonic boom, and made it faster with less energy use.
Did it work the first time?
No, I'm sure there were many iterations.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. That's really incredible.
Yeah, and there's so many examples. Systems level biomimicry gets into how do we build cities like forests that have ecosystem services. You can get really complex with it. But yeah, I go into nature, and open, public spaces are a big part of that, and get inspiration and learn about the organisms that have survived there for millions of years. And then how do we translate that to live in more harmony here on the planet?
One of the things I used to be the superintendent of the Denver Public Schools, and I know that a lot of the kids in that school district are kids living in poverty and kids who haven't had the chance to be able to get into our public lands. And I actually remember going to a elementary school not far from where you are right now in Lakewood, a little bit, actually it may have been in Lakewood, and the teacher had at the top of the classroom wall a kind of a frieze of the Colorado mountains going around it with a key on it that showed how tall they were. I said, why do you have that up there? Because the mountains are just over there. And why do you need to have that on your wall? And he said, I need to have it on my wall because even though the mountains are right there, the kids in my classroom have never had a chance to go there and don't have an idea of what the scale actually is and how big they actually are. And I think that is a reminder. You and I talked about this a little bit, about how to get citizens involved. Some of that is going to depend on our ability to get people who have not had the chance themselves into our public lands, to be able to get there, to be able to build a connection that,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
is
I
important
actually
for
just
them.
transitioned out of a role with the Kiva Center. It's a nonprofit in Boulder, and we have programs in Denver where I was the director. And we were part of this incredible neighborhood coalition called My Outdoor Colorado that does exactly that. It's a collective of nonprofits that all get kids, youth, adults into family and into nature in a variety of ways: camping, hiking, job opportunities, after school programs. And that was really powerful, because you do realize that, you know, access to public lands has a lot of hurdles for folks, and like, how do we break down those hurdles, invite them in, and give them equal access? It's a big conversation.
Now, I would say it's true for winter sports and it's true for the summer. And I think, you know, if there are people watching this who have ideas about how to do more of what you were just describing, I think that would be really important.
Yeah,
too.
I know you have to go vote, but I have one more question.
Okay.
Where can folks learn more about the work you do, both for Colorado Public Lands and/or get in touch with questions they have?
I think they can find. I don't have my telephone number here, or my website, but I will. If you just look up Michael Bennet, Bennet, just one T, you'll find me. And here they're giving me some here. Bennet.senate.gov, but Bennet is one T. And I would also, can I just say also, Lily, that there are a lot of people that are worried about what's going on today. I know that's not the topic of today, really. But if you are a federal employee who's worried about the layoffs that you were talking about earlier, you know, we've lost people in the Forest Service just in the last week or so. That's really, really devastating. Please reach out to our office if we can be of any help. And we always want to be people's first call on all these questions, but also your questions around public lands. Lily, I can't thank you enough. I do have to go vote. And
yes, thank you. This has been so wonderful. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
I will. You too. And have a wonderful weekend. I hope everybody gets outside.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.